Your voice is not just a sound, it's your story, your social class, your belonging, or your sentence. Sometimes speaking is enough for the world to decide your worth. Stay until the end to understand why the way you speak can change your destiny. The way you speak is not a simple biological accident. It's not just air hitting your vocal cords. It's a mirror, an archive, a mark. Your voice carries the history of your environment, your parents, your fears, and your desire to be accepted. You don't choose it, but the world does choose how it will hear you. From the first word you pronounce, you're already being read, interpreted, classified. Every time someone changes their tone when speaking to a boss, ordering a coffee, or entering a job interview, they're not just adapting, they're negotiating their right to belong, because there are places where your voice enters before you do, and if it doesn't match what is expected, the door closes before you can explain who you are. All of this happens almost invisibly, disguised as courtesy, as standards, as good manners. But in reality, it's a map of power that decides who deserves to be heard and who does. And single quotes T. Michel Foucault explained it with brutal clarity. Discourse is not just communication, it's a battlefield. Speaking is not harmless. Intonation, accent, word choice, everything has weight. Everything has consequences. Not all voices are worth the same, even when they say the same thing. Some make people uncomfortable, others calm them. Some represent threat, others prestige. The system knows this and takes advantage of it. It discriminates without looking like it. It excludes without having to say so. Pierre Bourdieu named it plainly, linguistic capital, as if words were currency, as if the way you speak could buy respect or condemn you to silence. And the cruelest part is that this system doesn't wait for you to grow up to activate itself. It classifies you as a child. Before you learn to write your name, you've already internalized which tone gives you safety and which one provokes rejection. Before you understand a complete sentence, you already know that some voices command and others obey. A baby recognizes and prefers familiar sounds. A child chooses friends not by clothes or face, but by how they sound. And from that point on, everything becomes a chain of adjustments. The accent becomes shame. Home words become errors. The code of your neighborhood becomes an obstacle. It's silent training for obedience disguised as correction. You don't notice it, but you learn it. And sometimes, you repeat it. It's not your resume, your studies, or your experience. Sometimes just one differently pronounced syllable enough for someone to decide you're not good enough. Manuel Fragani had everything required to get the job, but his Filipino accent made them uncomfortable. It sounded wrong, even though they couldn't explain why. He lost the opportunity not because he lacked capability, but because his voice didn't fit. The court ruled against him, as if speaking differently were not part of humanity, but a legally accepted flaw. That is the most effective violence, the kind that hides behind what looks normal, laughing at how someone talks, correcting them with superiority, assuming that someone with an accent is less trustworthy. No one says it out loud, but everyone feels it. And the worst part is that it repeats in schools, in the media, in courts, in workplaces. Language is not just a tool for communication. It's a weapon, a filter, a caste system. For generations, authoritarian regimes understood that to dominate a people, you must first break their language. In South Africa, during apartheid, native languages were banned from classrooms. In Spain, under Franco, Catalan and Basque were suppressed. Their goal wasn't just to impose a language, it was to impose an identity, to rip out what connects a community to its history, to force people to sound like others, think like others, live like others. And yet, there are those who refuse to be molded, those who turn their way of speaking into an act of defiance. Judith Butler wrote about identity as a constant performance. If that's true, then speaking as you choose is a form of daily resistance. In every neighborhood, in every song, in every word that sounds different from the standard, there is a powerful statement: we exist like this. Without correcting ourselves, rappers turned sonic marginalization into poetry. Indigenous communities preserved their languages despite forced forgetting. And in the middle of this tension comes the digital age, a new stage where, for the first time, silenced voices can be amplified. A young person with a rural accent can have millions of followers. A migrant can create a channel from their room and receive respect they were never given in person. The rules changed, but that doesn't mean discrimination disappeared. The internet promised freedom. It promised to give a voice to those who were never heard. It promised to break barriers of language, accent, geography, and in part, it did. Today, a teenager using street slang can be more influential than a scholar with a degree. Words once corrected in the classroom are now global trends. Dialects blend, rules blur, and form matters as much as content. But every promise carries a trap, because now it's not the teacher who corrects, nor the boss who judges. It's the algorithm. It's the metrics. It's an artificial intelligence that decides if your voice deserves to be seen, shared, or go viral. And that decision is also full of bias. Accents the system doesn't consider clear. Verb tenses that don't match the dominant pattern. Tones the algorithm discards without anyone noticing. Zygmunt Bauman warned us, we live in a liquid modernity. Everything shifts, nothing settles. And that also applies to language. It's no longer a norm imposed by the state. Now it's a new order dictated by social media, platforms, and invisible codes. Those who master digital language gain attention, influence, relevance. Those who don't are left out, not because they have nothing to say, but because they don't know how to say it in the way the system expects. And even so, amid all this new noise, there are people who cling to their original voice, even if it is not the most shared, even if it doesn't sound perfect, even if the world tells them to fix it. They do it because they know their way of speaking is not an error, it is their story, their truth, their body turned into sound. There is no real freedom if it requires silencing your identity. Childhood proves it. Just one comment at school, one correction without compassion, is enough for a child to understand that their voice ain't right. And so they start hiding it, filing it down, polishing it until it no longer hurts, until it no longer shows. That is not adaptation. That is surrender, a daily surrender, repeated millions of times in offices, classrooms, buses, meetings, until you no longer know whether you speak as yourself or as you were trained to speak. Pierre Bourdieu called it symbolic violence, making someone accept as natural that their way of speaking is inferior, convincing them they must change in order to have worth. But there is another possibility, to hold on to one's own voice, even when it makes others uncomfortable, to repeat it, to elevate it, to turn it into a banner, because speaking the way you truly are, in a world that demands correction, is not just an everyday act. It is a radical declaration, an existential stance, a cry that says, "This is my voice, and I will not change it." Speaking as you truly are is an act of courage. If this video resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, activate the bell, share your experience, and explore our content. We'll keep reflecting together. See you in the next video.